Hi guys, thanks for tuning in to another video on ForgottenWeapons.com. I'm Ian, and today we are continuing our look at Mannlicher automatic pistols with the 1896, 97, 1901, 1903 version. There's a little bit of complexity going on here. First, I want to touch on the very first 1896 Mannlicher, which we actually, for all of this, don't have an example of. This was a really only experimental pistol, and it built off of the commercial failure of the 1894 blow forward, kept its 7.6 millimeter cartridge, and put it into a gun that looks like these, but was a simple blowback pistol. Just like the Mannlicher was a simple blow forward, both of these were unlocked. That 7.6 millimeter cartridge was weak enough that it didn't require a locked breech system. So Mannlicher figured he could redesign the gun like this, make it a little more handy, and that was a dismal failure. So that pistol design only lasted a very brief period, and it was replaced right in that same year, 1896, with the second pattern of 1896 Mannlicher pistol, which is actually this one. So the first of these guns, they have a more conventional style to them, and they're now a locked breech pistol. Mannlicher has realized that for military service he needs a more powerful cartridge than he had in the blow forward guns, and so he develops the 7.63 millimeter Mannlicher, which is very similar to the 7.63 Mauser. It's a 7.63 by 23 millimeter cartridge. It fires an 85 grain bullet at about 1,000 feet per second. So in metric terms, that's a 5.1 gram bullet traveling at 305 meters per second. So this is not quite as potent as the 7.63 Mauser cartridge, which comes out basically at this exact same time. It's pretty similar to the 7.63 Borshardt cartridge that has been out for a while, so it's right in this playing field of military sidearm cartridges at the time. Now the first version, the 1896, has actually a flush box, or a non-detachable magazine. It's fed by stripper clips, holds 7 rounds, and well, it's this one. We'll take a closer look at it in a moment. This was tested by the Swiss military in 1897 and rejected. Now, Mannlicher went on to make a couple revisions. Most significantly, he replaced the flush fixed magazine with a detachable magazine. Same capacity, still 7 rounds, but now you could take the magazine out and replace it with new magazines, as well as load via stripper clip if you preferred. So that would be, I think we can effectively call that the 1897 pattern of gun. Now it's interesting, you will also see these referred to as the 1896 or 97/01 or /03. The reason for this difference is while these guns were patented and developed in the 1890s, they didn't actually go on the commercial market until the very early 1900s. Why not? Well, they were doing military testing on them, and it appears that they didn't want, Mannlicher would rather have gotten military contracts and spent his time chasing those rather than try and advertise and develop the pistol for the commercial market. So after a couple years when the military contracts were not forthcoming, then, well, okay, then I guess we'll put these things on the commercial market and see if we can make some of our development money back that way. So the best resource that I'm aware of, which is a book by Motz and Shuey, describes these as 1897/1901, although a lot of the English language material out there describes them as /03 pistols. I'm going to lean towards 1901 being when these were actually introduced to the civilian market, but couldn't swear to it because there is some disparity in the different sources that are available. Now there are a couple different versions of these guns that were introduced. Beyond just fixed versus detachable magazine, we also have some options for longer barrel lengths. Some of the standard guns have fixed rear sights, but you can also get tangent sights. We'll take a look at that. Of course, you can get shoulder stock attachments. The stock doubles as a holster. This is, again, something fairly typical of early automatic pistols having this option, but we've got a couple of those we can take a look at. And lastly, we also have a sporting carbine version of the gun. These were introduced in 1901, kind of like the pistol version, and they changed up the frame, got rid of the pistol grip, gave it a full-length wooden shoulder stock, and a longer barrel. Now there's one critical problem with these carbines, which is that the handguard is attached to the barrel and the slide assembly. These are short recoil guns, so when they fire, the barrel has to reciprocate back about 5 millimeters in order to cycle. On these carbines, if you hold the handguard firmly, you will prevent it from cycling and the gun will malfunction. So kind of understandable. These were never particularly popular. In fact, none of these guns were ever particularly popular. In the grand scheme of things, very few of them were made. There were two different versions of this carbine. We have here a civilian version with some checkering and sling swivels on the bottom, and then we also have a military pattern carbine. For all of its kind of wimpy caliber, this doesn't seem today like something the military would be interested in. It's basically a pistol caliber carbine, but they did actually try and pursue military contracts with them. So you'll see a sling swivel on the side and a slot cut in the stock for a German style of sling. Pretty cool to look at. So why don't we go ahead and take a closer look at a few of the details of these, and we'll go ahead and take one apart because they're actually extremely simple guns to disassemble, which is pretty cool for being as early as they are. So we'll start with the first pattern here. This is the fixed magazine version. This was actually tested by the Swiss in 1897. You will generally see this referred to as a model 1896/2 because it is the short recoil locked breech version. So we have a big lever here on the side that is directly connected to the hammer. So that is both a cocking lever and cocking indicator. It is a single action only pistol, so you have to cock it before you can fire it. But you can use it like that to drop the hammer gently. You can also use it to manually recock the pistol. We have a safety back here, which when you flip it up like that, disconnects the trigger and blocks the slide from moving. So it's actually, you know what, these controls are not particularly awkward to use, which is also kind of impressive and unusual for as early as this pistol is. No other controls on the outside. Of course, with the fixed magazine, there's nothing to remove down here. Well, you could remove the floor plate, but that's for disassembly. To function, this thing has a pivoting locking block that lifts up to engage and then drops down to disengage. And in order to cycle it, we simply pull back on that bolt handle right there. So this uses the 763 or 765. You'll see it designated both ways. Mannlicher cartridge, which is a bottleneck cartridge, very similar to 763 Mauser, but slightly less potent. In this case, this fixed magazine version holds 7 rounds. And there we go. That's pretty much all there is to show you on this particular one. So let's move on to the 1897 version, which was upgraded with a detachable magazine. All right, so here's the detachable magazine version. This was a pretty quick upgrade from Mannlicher, still in the same year, 1896 or 1897, depending on how you see these referenced. Kind of take your pick for terminology. But the majority of the guns made, there were about 1,000 total, and most of them are going to be of this standard pattern. So we still have the cocking lever up here. We still have the safety back here. We still have no other controls on this side. We do have this detachable magazine though. Now the obvious thing that you would do is grab this button and pull it back, and it is locked in place and doesn't go anywhere. This actually has a sort of magazine retention security feature to it, where you'll notice that the magazine doesn't look like it's quite all the way inserted. That is true. To remove the mag, you actually have to push it in. Then you can pull the magazine catch back and remove the magazine. I said earlier these hold 7. Sorry about that. That was a typo on my part. These guys, the detachable magazines, hold 6 cartridges. So he did actually lose 1 round of capacity switching from the fixed mag to the detachable ones, but detachable is probably seen as an advantage regardless. If we look closely here at the magazine catch, you can see it's got kind of a little hook to it that's going to very securely lock this magazine in place in that little retention slot at the back. So you're definitely not losing the magazines out of this thing unintentionally. Now, disassembly of these is really remarkably, impressively simple. I'm going to go ahead and cock the hammer, and then we have a little disassembly catch right here behind the trigger. You can even see the little spring in there, and what we need to do to disassemble the gun is wedge something in here, a screwdriver if you're a Swiss trooper in 1897, a little wooden stick so we don't mar the finish if you're a collector today. We're going to wedge that in, push that lever forward, there we go, and then the trigger group just lifts right out. In fact, once we take the trigger group out, everything else just kind of falls to pieces here because the slide comes right off the front of the gun once that's out. So this is what's locking everything together. This is our locking wedge. You can see here it is in the upward position and it's locked behind the breech, or behind the bolt, so I can't push the bolt back. And then this surface of the locking wedge is going to be locked against this locking shoulder in the trigger guard assembly, the magazine assembly, or the lower assembly we can call it. Once this assembly slides backwards, this is pulled out of contact with the locking shoulder. It can then pivot down just a little bit. I can demonstrate that here. So it just moves that much and it's pinned in place, or well, held in place by that screw, which goes clear through. Once that is in the downward position, then the bolt can travel backwards behind it. You can see the recoil spring right there. There is this open slot in the middle of the locking block because that is where the hammer goes. So when you fire the gun, that hammer is going to travel up through the center of the locking block, hit the firing pin, and fire the gun. The grip frame here really has nothing going on except the safety. So when I push that up, we're just moving the position of this lug, which will lock the trigger, and this guy blocks the bolt from moving. Really simple. Other than that, it's just some wooden grips and a lanyard loop. Now, I do want to point out this is a very, very early example here. This is serial number 34, and it does have one particular early feature, which is a completely fixed front sight that's just a milled part of the barrel assembly. That would change pretty quickly. Here's number 278, which has an adjustable front sight. So it's just dovetailed in and you can actually move it left and right to fix any potential windage problems. Taking a larger view of number 278 here, we can see that really nothing else has changed. This is the same pistol. I will point out the iron sights. The rear sight is located here on the back of the frame. There is a curved cutout in the middle of the bolt handle so that you can get a sight picture through it. These are pretty tiny sights. There you go. That's about what you're getting. There's what the rear sight looks like. Pretty small sight picture there. Now, in addition to our standard style here, there was also a long pistol made, a long version, which has just a slightly longer barrel that you can see out there. That was coupled with an adjustable rear sight. This is a tangent style rear sight, indicated for 1, 2, 3, and 400 meters. And that allows you to just slide the sight up like that. Special order item there. If you want the target model, well, they're happy to provide it. And it does also have a dovetailed front sight, so windage adjustable. Now, if you really want to be able to do some good shooting with these, you would need a shoulder stock. And you'd be in luck because a shoulder stock was also an available option. There's a standard pattern of stock slot here that you could have on the back of the grip. That couples with a combination holster slash stock. So as a holster, it's kind of ridiculously huge because it has to fit this long barrel in, but there we are, stowed. And then we can take the pistol out. I think this is a replacement flap on this one, but we then have a stock attachment lug here, very similar to what you get on a C96 Mauser, and that just snaps into place. And you now have a stocked 1901, 1896, again, pick your designation, of Mannlicher automatic pistol. It is interesting to notice here that the tangent sight on these stock equipped pistols is actually set up a bit less optimistically than the non-stock equipped one. The sight on this is actually in 50 meter increments, so 50, 150, and 200, as opposed to this guy, which is just a long-barreled pistol, which is 1, 2, 3, and 400. So you'll notice on the pistol here, when I move the sight to its farthest 400-meter position, it's really elevated quite high. On the stocked carbine version, at its longest, it's much lower. Now, if that stocked pistol isn't good enough for you, you want something even more accurate and stable, well, as of 1901, you do have the option of having a purpose-built carbine. You'll notice the action here is the same as the standard pistols, but you don't have a pistol grip. You have a tang back here and on top connected to a stock. The safety has been slightly reshaped, but it still works the same way. We still have this cocking lever on the side. We have our tangent sight here, and this is, in fact, a 1 to 400 meter again. This particular one is one of the few of these that's actually dated. Well, this model was introduced in 1901. This particular gun was made in 1906. 1906 is also when they introduced the version in 7.63 Mauser. Don't know if they actually made any of those, but they were advertised. So, and serial number on this is 343. These carbines were serial numbered in the same run as all of the standard pistols. So these were manufactured for a number of years in small numbers, probably up until World War I. We have this kind of cute little full-length wood stock here, a windage adjustable front sight at the end, sling swivel mounted on the bottom there. And as I had mentioned, the operating system requires this upper assembly to cycle backwards. So this offers a lot of potential for malfunctioning the gun by holding too tightly onto the front handguard, which is kind of goofy. When Mauser and Luger made their carbines, they fixed this. They actually attached the front stock to a non-moving part of the lower frame instead of the slide. Right, and lastly here, the perspective makes this one look a little bigger, but these are actually the same size. Lastly, we have the military pattern carbine, which simply has a slot in the stock for a sling. The front swivel is located on the side, so you could carry this flat across your back, noting that the pokey lever is protruding out from the other side, so this nice flat side would be against your back, this would be pointing away from you. And that's the military pattern, where someone, say on horseback, could sling that over their back and carry it easily. The civilian pattern gun has the sling swivels located on the bottom, where you would typically expect to have them to carry on a civilian gun. Thank you for watching, guys. Hope you enjoyed the video. Very cool to take a look at a wide range of 1896, 7, 01, 03 Mannlicher pistols here. Hopefully you learned something about them, found out some details you didn't know before. If you enjoy this sort of content, please do consider checking out my Patreon page. The subscribers there are what really allow me to dig up cool, very cool old pistols like these and bring them to you guys. Thanks for watching.